Welcome to Conversations on Sex, Addiction, and Relationships. I'm Wendy Conquest, and I'm here with Tim Stein and Dan Drake. Geneva Tony is not with us today, but we wanted to keep providing information to you on a regular basis. So today we are going to talk about secrets. And we talk about lying a lot especially with sex addiction and betrayal trauma, but this idea of secrets has come up. And I'll just say that I read an article, it was in Psychology Today, July 2022, and the title was Why We Keep So Many Secrets. And so I read the article, and it's been haunting me a bit. Here we are a year later, and so I wanted to discuss this in our conversation today, and Tim and Dan seem excited about the idea, so here we are. So how are you guys? How are you doing today?
Good. Well, we had some pre-recording conversations, so obviously it was rich. Hopefully we can keep some of that going, but I'm doing okay. I think this is a really important topic.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking forward to it. I think this is going to be an interesting topic because there's nuances to it. Like so many things in life, there isn't a easy one answer. And I'm curious because the article you read, it sounded like they were making secret like a very all or nothing concept. And I'll be interested to see where our conversation goes, because I make up we're going to end up with much more of a nuance, which some people may love and other people might hate.
Which I think is good to be mindful of. This may be difficult to hear. We hope you can stay with us through the end, and we welcome obviously any questions or follow up on this, because we know this can be a really difficult, triggering topic.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So one of the pieces is there a difference between secrets and lying? Do you think?
Oh, sure. Throw that answer out and make us answer it.
Yeah, right. Well,
yeah, right. Yeah.
One thing that we start. Well, can I even back us up a second?
Sure.
One thing that we were talking about even before we started recording here, how do we define a secret? Can we start there? What is a secret? And we talked about that article. I'm not sure it was clearly defined. I mean, it sounds obvious, like the stupidest question. Like, what? We all know what a secret is. Something I'm not sharing with somebody. Is that what we're talking about?
I'm thinking, right? So a secret, my definition, and I'm not going by Webster's, is that it's information that I have that I don't want anybody else to know, or it's information that I share with some people but not other people. So I go back to grammar school, right? Grammar school, I just dated myself. I go back to elementary school, when the girls would get together and two of us would share information or share something perhaps personal, or even maybe a rumor about somebody else. And then it's like, okay, so this is our secret, right? This binds us together. You and I have this, this information or what we have shared and no one else knows. And it was binding in a way. It was part of the attachment almost. I don't know if the guys did that or if you had that experience, but so that's kind of what I'm thinking about. I think couples can have a lot of secrets, but then how, it might be, how does secret differ from personal information?
Right.
That you don't share with others.
Yeah, there was my first definition to your question, which I guess now I have to rethink, is I thought lying, if we're going lying versus secrets, then lying to me would be more of a act of commission and a secret is act of omission. So I'm lying as I'm actively saying something that's false or misleading. Secret is something I'm not sharing, withholding. I think they can both be incredibly detrimental and damaging. But maybe when what you just said, sharing a secret, I don't know though, that may, I don't know if that my definition would work for what you just said, Wendy,
Mhm. Mhm.
or if you guys even agree. Because to me, then how do we define secrecy versus privacy, or I think in what you said, Tim, boundaries?
Yeah.
So let me go over to parts of the article, and then we can go from there. And what this article says is we all harbor secrets. Some are big and bad, some are small and trivial. Researchers have parsed which truth to tell and which not to. And so let's see here, secrecy. So how they define secrecy is intentionally withholding personal
Oh,
information from one or more persons. Keeping secrets can often be harmful in the long run, both physically and psychologically. However, according to psychologists Michael Slepian and Alex Koch, it's not the withholding that hurts us. Instead, it's the ruminating that harms. So do we start there?
Well, we had this conversation off air, and I just want to go back to it, which is I think when they're saying it's the rumination that harms, they're limiting the harm of the secret to the individual. And what we know is that, when it comes to addiction, there are some secrets, and I'll qualify it that way. There are some secrets that, whether the addict is ruminating on them or not, or anybody is ruminating on them or not, the lack of rumination isn't going to create the problem. It's when that secret comes out, and we've all heard all kinds of crazy ways that secrets come out. When it comes out, that's when it becomes problematic.
yeah. I mean, I think someone who is in active addiction and let's say contracts an STI, and then they don't tell their partner about it, and then the discovery comes when the partner gets a medical exam or something, and they find out they have a STI. I mean, that's the addict may not have distress about that. They may have not have ruminated about it, but of course that's going to be incredibly damaging to the partner, that discovery.
And on the other side of that equation, most addicts and many partners that come into recovery keep the addiction a secret.
From some people in life, right.
They're not, oftentimes, sometimes addicts want to tell everybody, and sometimes they want to tell nobody, but it's often very appropriate for them to sort of like be limited on who are they sharing their addiction and that they're in recovery with, because there is still a stigma, unfortunately, around sex addiction. Some partners have told a ton of people about what's going on, and some partners want to tell no one because they're afraid of the response. And so they're holding that secret about the addiction and the impact of what's going on. And in some ways, that's a very appropriate thing to do as they're managing sort of the boundaries. They're managing who knows. Sometimes those secrets become problematic because, I sometimes think if you put that out on the table, then you can deal with what's going on. But that's probably not a day one thing. So there are times that secrets are, again, I see it, sometimes what we're really talking about is boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes talk about honesty, and in 12 step we talk about rigorous honesty, and I will say there's a difference between rigorous honesty and brutal honesty.
Yeah.
And so I think there's that same thing with secrets. There are secrets that you're keeping and they're brutal if you keep them, and there are secrets that you're keeping that it's like, well, this is more of a boundary.
Yeah, no, I really like that. I think we're getting to it, right? Like a secret, I think of a secret is potentially being rooted in shame, and a boundary is thinking through all the ramifications of why am I withholding this information? And so am I withholding this information? And I think it gets very tricky. And Tim, you nailed it at the beginning. Like this might be very, very complicated. Is especially people that have distorted thinking, right, are in distorted thinking, saying, well, I'm not telling them this information because it's going to hurt them. So it's going to be a boundary of mine, and I'm just going to do this behavior because it's just for me and I don't want to hurt the other person. And so, it's not a secret, really, it's a boundary. So we have to be really, really careful of, if we are withholding information, why are we doing that?
One of the things that I will often talk about with the addicts is, you are not a good person to decide if this is a boundary or a secret.
Mm-hmm.
You are not a good person to decide if your partner shouldn't know this information. You need to bounce that off of other people and let other people who are not you guide you in that process. And so I guess when we're talking secrets, for me, one of the things would be, is this something that has weight that I'm aware of, that I'm consciously not sharing, and I am choosing to not share it by my own volition? Or am I choosing not to share it out of consultation with other people that I trust to give me solid guidance?
Mm-hmm.
That aren't just going to confirm what I want them to say.
Yeah. No, it's not going to my best friend and saying, so dude, I don't think I should tell him. They're like, oh no, definitely you shouldn't.
Go do it.
That's just, confirmation bias.
That's a good point, though, because I think, I hear that all the time, and people will come in and I guess maybe it's a distinction between malignant secrets and benign secrets, and then how do we know the difference? I don't know. I mean, I think that's what we're talking about. And when is it actually a privacy that I can keep a boundary for? When is it my own distorted thinking that's saying it's a boundary when it's really not? And that's often more of what I hear, is my clients coming in saying, I don't want to share this because if I share it, it will harm my partner, so I'm not going to. I hear that all the time, when the reality is, most of the time it's because I'm really scared of what the impact might be. I'm ashamed of it. I want to hide it. I don't want to share it. And I want to make a valid reason. And yes, it may actually hurt my partner to hear this information, but would it harm my partner more to hear the information now, or to find this information out 6 months from now? What's the worst harm? Or would the partner actually want to know? Most of the time they do want to know. If there's this debate, a lot of times the partner does want to know. Mm-hmm. So yeah, but that tricky. I think that's an important thing you said, Tim. Consultation, so important. Having different people, a therapist sponsor, your support team, people that can have trusted wisdom.
Yeah, and I think that's really important for partners as well, because I think when partners find out about the sex addiction, it's this piece of, who do I tell and when do I tell? And some partners in the traumatic reaction will just tell everybody. And that tends to be problematic later on, and it's done in a traumatic state. So absolutely not the best time to do that, and it happens. But partners also that are sitting with all of this and holding it, that I hear often, I feel like I'm holding a secret. I can't tell my family, I can't tell my friends. We've said we're not going to tell anybody, and it's eating me alive. So that would be a piece where they're holding the secret, and it's being very detrimental, and they're not getting support. So then the boundary piece comes in, right? Well, so what do I tell, and who do I tell? And how do I do that in a very mindful way? And who do I get consultation from? And I think the main people that partners get consultation from are therapists and coaches. So
or finding good support group that of other people that have been through it, that they understand, they know, because they've walked it. Because sometimes we, even in the best circumstances, we've heard these stories, family members, friends, just that haven't walked through this, they don't understand, and they give a knee-jerk response, which is usually polarizing. Either, I don't know, dump this guy for what he's done or something like that. That's a simplistic answer. Or not helpful, or shaming response too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think there's also this piece. So Terrence Real has five relationship breakers, I'm going to say, and one of them, and I hope I have this right, I don't have his book close at hand, but it's Unbridled Self-Expression. Do you guys know that? And so there's also this piece, I think, that happens with addicts anyway, is that they are very, very secretive. And then when they're told, okay, now you have to tell the truth, the pendulum swings all the way to the other side, and they're telling absolutely everything. And that is not helpful either. That can be extremely harmful. So I think, how do we guide people, right? How do we guide people around what's appropriate and what's not? And I'm curious, guys, like, do you have a barometer for that, or any kind of explanation that you give to your clients of, here's being secretive, here's telling the truth, and here's going overboard? Like, how does a person know when they're going overboard?
I have a relatively benign example that I use, which is, I don't know why I always use a grocery store, but I do use a grocery store. If I'm at the grocery store and for whatever reason, there's a person there that I am triggered by, not mentioning it at all is, if it's enough of a trigger that it weighed on me, not mentioning it at all is keeping a secret. Talking to people in program and letting them know about it and saying, hey, this was kind of triggering and this happened. Okay, now I'm letting it out and I'm talking with other people about it. They may suggest that I share with my partner. It may be very appropriate for me to go to my partner and say, hey, it's kind of triggered today. I made phone calls. I kept my boundaries in place. I'm working my program, but I'm feeling solid. And my partner might say, well, what were you triggered by? Well, there was a person at the grocery store that I was triggered by, but I kept my boundaries in place and I moved on. I think that that's a perfectly appropriate conversation. If the partner doesn't ask, what was it? Many partners are happy with, oh, you were triggered. I can tell that. I'm glad you used your program. Thank you very much. Some partners want more information, but that's a couple's dynamic to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say that it's brutal honesty to go to my partner and say, hey, I was triggered. And now let me describe this person at the store and what they looked like and what they were doing and what it was about them that was triggering to me. And now I'm painting a picture in my partner's head that is doing nothing but just create more trauma and pain for my partner.
And can I just say on that, I think it's such a good point, Tim, because Janice Cottle and I try to differentiate disclosure, and we're thinking there's not, some people share but it's not a disclosure, it's a confession. And I feel like if I'm oversharing, sometimes that brutal honesty is unburdening myself of something that I feel shame about, and it may be mine to work with my recovery team and say I felt the shame, and I know, but some people will confess it and then kind of have their partner almost like they want absolution from their partner, like, tell me I'm not a bad boy or something, and then that puts the partner in a terrible spot, because like, this isn't my job, first of all, and then second, this is information too much information I don't even know what to do with. So I think there's a lot of pre-work we can do, and even determining that, who's this for? If I'm sharing this, is it so I feel better, or is it because I feel like it's something, in consultation with that my partner really does need to know and deserves to know?
I absolutely agree. I actually think that, and I encourage addicts, when stuff like this comes up, I want you to go into your recovery community first. And sometimes partners don't like that, but I will explain. I want them going to them first, because I don't want the addict to use their partner as their higher power.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't want the addict to go to the partner and say, I acted out, or I was tempted, or I was triggered, and I'm telling you what was going on, and I'm really looking for you to tell me, like you said, oh, you're still okay, and then I can take your unconditional love and internalize it, feel better about myself temporarily, and hopefully get myself back on track. Or I might be using him as a fire and brimstone higher power.
True.
I go to you, I tell you, you're angry and you're pissed off and you're hurt, and now I feel guilt and shame and deeply repentant about what I did, and I use that to sort of either reinforce who I am or get myself on track, or like, okay, well, I need to obviously behave better.
Mm-hmm.
But
Or say, right, or say, oh, see, I shouldn't have told her anything.
right.
So see, yeah, that was a mistake.
Right. That's a good
You
point.
guys don't know anything, now she's all upset. I'm just not gonna tell her anymore.
So I
Yeah,
love that because I do not want addicts going to their partners unfiltered and dumping this out because it's often um even when partners are saying, I want to know, I'm like, yeah, but we gotta filter it because
yeah.
I
Oh,
don't want it to be unintentionally harmful to you.
Do
yes.
you have a question on that, Wendy? That's
As you were talking, what I thought of and came up with is, what does it look like if they write out ahead of time what they want to say to their partner, and
Uh,
they say it out loud in a private place and say, okay, how does that sound? Like, can I imagine how my partner might be reacting to this? But it's so I want this idea of them externalizing it, right? Like, so, and slowing things down, because I think in recovery it's very, especially early recovery, and I'm going to call it middle recovery, is that there's a lot of anxiety for the addict of, I don't know how to do this, right? I'm doing this different and I'm not doing it 100% right. And so there's just a lot of tension and stress. So I always like people to slow things down.
I
And one of the ways to slow it down is to write.
I would take it
So,
one step further, and I really like the idea of writing because
yeah,
it's slowing it down and it's letting them consider it more.
right,
Even when people write stuff, we don't always we tend to see it from our own perspective and what we put out. Oh, that makes sense. And I think the message I'm trying to put out there makes sense, but we sometimes miss it. So I would say write it out and take it to, again, another
yes,
trusted person and
right.
read it and share it with them to get their feedback on, is the message I'm actually trying to convey what I'm actually conveying?
Right. And I think this is a key to increasing intimacy,
Mhm.
to be very, and I think I just am feeling out the partner's perspective, and wow, if she knows that he has done the due diligence, like realized, oh gosh, I did have a trigger, I'm going to write out what happened internally for me. Now I'm going to go to the other guys and say, okay, here's what happened, this is how I'm phrasing it, how does that sound to you? And then going to her. Now this can't take days or weeks to do, right? We want, depending
as
on,
close as
and we're
possible.
talking about triggers, right? We're
Right.
talking about
Oh,
triggers.
also a trigger, but clearly some people do have boundary plans. For example, if someone has a relapse, there very well may be already a plan in place. So we need to go by that plan that let's say the partner says, I need to know within 12 hours, 24 or 48 hours. We've talked about kind of these, whatever
Right,
the plan is. Obviously we need to do it in that time frame.
right. But
Let's,
Depending.
let's
and maybe because with slips and relapses, the moment it happens, can we say it's happened in secret? And does the person write it out right
Their
away
team.
and then
Yeah,
follow up
I think
with
so.
the support system, and then but I don't know,
That's why I
I have
said
a
12 hours, because I
12-hour
know I
rule on
remember
that.
you've said this before. I
I
know.
like the 12 hours, but different therapists say 24 hours, some say 48 hours. By then I think
we
all
typically
the
say 48 hours.
defenses are coming in. What?
We typically say 48 hours as a minimum. And and
Wow.
and what I always say is I want them to, within the first 24 hours of a relapse, I want them talking to their recovery people about what happened, how they got there, and what their plan is to get back on track, and how to share this with their partner in a respectful way. And then they have up to 48 hours to get to their partner at an appropriate time and share it with them. And mostly
Wow.
because I want them to process it and I want them to have that understanding before they take it to their partner unfiltered.
So, so for our listeners, we have so Tim, you know the name of it. It's called the mail. What do we call it? The mail. You basically can write in questions.
Oh yeah,
Mailbag episodes.
we have a mailbag.
Mailbag. Well, thank you. Okay. So for our listeners, I would be so, so appreciative if you write in and give us feedback around what you think, because I'm going to just take the partner's perspective today. Jeannie's not here. So the partner's perspective. So it's the piece of, if I'm a partner and I'm waiting 2 days, I sense something's up with my partner. I'm saying, hey, you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. And he's
Oh no
doing
no
this.
no 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 no. Hold on, because we always make it clear if the partner comes and says is everything okay? For the addict to say, no, there's something I need to share with you, but I need to process and work and figure it out. And I'm going to come back to you and share it with you later on.
Oh boy. I don't know. I don't know. I think as a partner with the anxiety and the
Mhm.
stress, I don't know. Does that work? I mean, is that working? So I would say if that's going to happen, that there has to be some sort of scaling, like from 0 to 10.
Mm.
This is big. This is a 10.
DEF levels.
Yeah, and she's going to want to know right away. I can't. That's torture to wait. If they say, "Hey, look, it's a 3 or a 4," then okay, it's a 3 or 4. Maybe she can calm down around that. But her nervous system is going to be absolutely on fire.
I I don't know. What we have typically found is that when we put these in place, most of the partners have reported that I know something's off. I know there's something going on, and I know he's going to bring it to me. And so it may not be comfortable, but I can reach out to my support group and I can contain myself because I know he's working on how to bring this to me in a way that's respectful and contained and giving me the information that I need.
Okay, you just gave me there's something I wanted to back up with, if that's okay. It's trust. So it sounds like partners
Yeah.
have a trust in you in the process. I was feeling, so I was thinking of Jeannie not being here earlier, having this. I could just feel if partners listening and saying, kind of squirming with the fact that, wait, you're going to be filtering all this stuff with these other people or your team that maybe, therapeutic support has failed in the past. They've instructed you to keep these secrets that have been so damaging, or, recovery community that's kind of, I don't know, perpetuated some gaslighting or that of withholding and lying. So I don't, for some of my partners, I don't see a lot of trust in the system that gets earned. And maybe that's just, you guys have earned it by, good solid work. And then that team, but it seems like there's this extra level of, oof, I have some partners being like, I don't really want you to filter it somewhere else because I don't trust whatever filtered stuff is coming and who you're actually filtering the stuff with. So I guess I just want to name that part, how scary this is to trust others in the process.
I, I like that.
Anyway.
I was actually just watching a John Gottman video last night. And one of the things he was talking about is they did a lot of research into relationship repair when something happened. And what they did in their research is they found there was no conclusive answer on how to repair the relationship. That there was no brilliant way that psychologists or therapists could give you to phrase it or actions to take, or there was nothing that really correlated with this is what does effective repair. What it came down to was the person who was impacted by the behavior, how much investment they had in the relationship and their willingness to accept the repair, whatever it was.
So for those of you who have just joined or are still listening, you're listening to conversations on sex, addiction, and relationships. And today we're talking about secrets.
So when you think about that investment piece with relationship repair, do you think that plays into, for partners who have more investment in a relationship, having more tolerance for waiting a little bit longer for the addict to bring them this information after they processed it? Or if they're less invested, they have less tolerance for that time space?
I do. I guess I still would want to know. I mean, I could think of plenty of partners who would say to me or say, yeah, I'm very invested, but my couples therapy, he was lying through couples therapy for a couple of years. I've had friends who knew about this, who betrayed me. My therapist said gave me this advice that was really terrible. And so I'm here trying to do this with you. I'm invested in this process, but I don't know that I trust you yet. I've been, wounded and traumatized by the treatment system. I also don't know what is this relationship? What am I invested in? I'm not really sure what I'm dealing with yet. Who is this person that I'm with and that I thought I married 30 years ago that I'm just finding this stuff about? So I can see that stuff. Like what does investment mean?
Yeah.
I'm invested, but I've been traumatized. I'm trying to figure out which way's up right now.
Yeah. So I think it's also where they are in the recovery. So where if he's had a lot of slips, relapses, and she keeps on having to wait 48 hours and 48 hours. And putting
Oh,
on
right.
the
If it's
background.
chronic, it's not a
Yeah,
one-time
it's
thing.
like,
If this is
right,
every other
exactly.
week, you're doing the same thing.
Right, right. So it's how often are the slips or relapses happening? What stage of recovery are they in? So I'm thinking more about if there's a slip or relapse, that it has to happen, the disclosure to the partner has to happen very, very quickly. And the reason that I say that is, but I hear Tim's point too, that it needs to be very careful, and it has to be with all the information, appropriate information, done well. I hear that. And I've just seen too many addicts where if they're giving too much time, they start saying, I don't know, was it a relapse or was it a slip? I don't know. Maybe it wasn't even a slip. Wait, let me go back to my circles again. Wait, no, I don't think it was in my inner circle. It's probably middle circle. I don't need to share. And so this sort of, I call it the slip and slide, they're kind of they kind of start the thoughts start manipulating, and it's out of shame. I'm sure shame, maybe fear. A lot of spouses, partners get very, very angry if there's a slip or relapse, understandably so. And can we say that many, many addicts are conflict avoidant?
That's also
So
coming from an idea or a place of the addict is doing this in isolation, and they're letting their own denial process run in their head, as opposed to
that is true.
consulting with other people. And again, it's that not just anybody in the recovery community, it's the people that are really going to give them quality guidance in the recovery community, who are going to be able to see through their bullshit
Mm-hmm,
and move past that.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
Gottman used the word investment. I think what you guys are saying is absolutely accurate. Trust gets into that, patterns gets into that, trauma and where the partner is in their own trauma healing, or the addict at his trauma. The trust in the community to actually provide guidance. I mean, there's a lot of things that play into how tolerant somebody would be, and how quickly I need this information versus I trust that you're going to get this to me in a respectful way.
Which I
Mhm.
think is a really good point. It kind of inspires me. I think I took this for granted that I, I, I provide a confidential, safe service, and that's a really important investment that I have in the process. But I have people coming in that may already not trust me because of their previous experiences, and they're coming after betrayal. So why would they trust me? So I guess it just inspires me to be even more trustworthy in my process, be a safer sport make sure the partner feels safe, that I really do have their best interest. And that doesn't just come right away. I take time, take whatever time you need to kind of show that. And I can demonstrate hopefully trustworthiness over time. But I think it inspires me. I think as a professional, I hope any of us as a professional to really be that safe space, and that will build trust so that the partner I can trust this process with you because I know Tim's got my back. I know Dan, we're doing this work that we're really trying to help restore or help. Even if I'm working with the addict, I'm always thinking of the partner. What's their experience? What's the impact of this? What might they be experiencing? What's going to help or harm? And so I'm always thinking of that. I think that we need to do that from this work if we're working, as professionals. So it just, what you just said inspires me to be even more safe and trustworthy.
So as we're talking about this, what's coming up for me is that we're talking about what is effective as far as recovery, sobriety, and relational healing. And what we're saying on some level is some secrets are appropriate to keep. Some details of things that are triggering are not helpful to share. Figuring out how to share something is going to be, and there are some things to say I was triggered, but I'm not going to go into the details with them. Or for partners, I'm having a really hard time, but maybe they're not telling people about what's going on with the addiction. So when we're talking with addicts and partners, how do we help people to find that balance between secrets that are going to be problematic and having appropriate boundaries?
So a couple more thoughts. in terms of, I think, so first of all, of course, being in consultation is critical. It's making with those safe, trustworthy people. I also think doing that self-reflection and then bring it to your team, if I'm keeping this a secret or if I'm sharing this, who's this for, really doing the deep reflection, I think is important. I also think and I've seen this happen, if someone's saying, no, this is privacy, this is a boundary that I'm keeping, and they're just saying this is a boundary, I think that's okay if they've determined in consultation. What I will say is, for example, one example would be, I'm working with an addict and they're coming into a therapy session, and then the partner's like, so how was therapy? What'd you talk about? Perfectly fine question. If the addict says, well, that's a boundary, it's my therapy session, it's my own private space, and kind of basically back off. Now that's a boundary, and yes, it is a private space, and I do think it needs to remain private. That said, that's not very relational to say back off, that this is a boundary, you can't know anything about it. I think a more relational, so I would encourage people, if there's those kinds of boundaries you're setting, what is the access point? So yeah, you're not transcribing the session or recording it or something, but could you say, here's a couple things that I'm taking from this, and I can challenge myself to be vulnerable and open some of this stuff. So it's maybe not sharing the whole context of everything, but can I share some pieces of it? So I think that's I've had partners like, I want to read your journal entries, so I can really get a sense of your headspace or something, which that's not going to really get what the partner's really wanting. But can you say, well, these are the things I'm growing in my recovery, and do some sort of more intentional check-in each day. So I guess that's what I would say, to be nuanced. If you're going to keep a boundary, make sure what that is there information you could share that would provide some vulnerability and kind of connection and intimacy with your partner.
Yeah, I think I love that, Dan. I think also there's pieces around, so if a addict is going to have boundaries, that it's discussed with the partner. And I'm going to go to on the other side. A lot of times partners are like, this is my boundary, this is my boundary. And I know that it's meant as in the vein of keeping her safe. And a lot of times the addicts are coming from an abandonment wound, and they get activated by the boundaries. So how can each person say, this is what I feel I need to do to be safe? And are you okay with that? Do you understand how I feel? Do you understand where this is coming from? So that there's mutual empathy. There can be mutual empathy in that. So thank you, listeners. And as you can see, we're a team that likes to challenge each other, and sometimes we agree and sometimes we disagree, and that's all part of the conversation. And so we're letting you into our inner world this way, which we are happy and excited to do. We also want to hear from you. We have a mailbag, and so you can write us at conversations.sar@gmail.com, and you can send questions, comments there. The questions we will answer live and post to you. And of course, we'll take your questions your comments seriously if you have feedback for us. And in the meantime, we wish you all well. Please, if you liked this episode or other episodes, like us there and share them on the different social media platforms, Twitter, like LinkedIn, wherever. Thanks so much.